The writs will be issued for the South Australian election in what is shaping to be a pretty close contest between a minority Liberal government and a resurgent Labor opposition. No incumbent government across Australia has lost an election since the pandemic began, but that could be under threat, serious threat, ahead of the state poll. Joel Philp has this election explainer.
After a 16-year-long Labor reign, Stephen Marshall propelled the Liberals to victory in South Australia at the 2018 election.
A new dawn for South Australia.
The former businessman began with a vision of transforming SA into a hub for growth in futuristic new industries, including the creation of Lot 14, a tech precinct drawing in global tech heavyweights like Amazon and space startups.
We have an ambition to make this the startup capital of Australia.
It's almost Stephen Marshall's private obsession. It's got an exciting future. I'm not sure if it's become a vote winner.
What could win or lose Stephen Marshall votes is instead his pandemic performance. South Australia seemingly shifting from one leader to three. Chief Health Officer Nicola Spurrier and top cop Grant Stevens tasked with steering the state through the crisis through the state's Transition Committee, a decision-making committee on COVID rules and restrictions that Stephen Marshall was not a part of.
I must admit, this is something that we didn't anticipate.
I think South Australians have been overwhelmingly happy and proud about the way the state got through the pandemic. But the one criticism, and it's a criticism you hear most from business, is that Stephen Marshall took his hands off the steering wheel.
For several months, pandemic politics relegated the relevance of Labor leader Peter Malinauskas, who struggled to get the same public recognition.
When you take away the hard work of Grant Stevens and Nicola Spurrier, what's left? The cupboard is bare.
The Marshall government, though, points to policy achievements like legalising euthanasia, progress that often came at the expense of party unity. Discontent grew among Liberal Conservatives. The tumultuous term also saw two Liberals subject to scandals that saw them shift to the crossbench, leaving Stephen Marshall with a minority. Both former Liberals, now a thorn in the side of Premier Marshall heading into the campaign.
I think there's a very real chance that whoever wins is going to be a minority government and beholden to those independents.
These power plays culminated in a little-known Liberal MP, Dan Cregan, defecting to the crossbench before becoming Speaker with Labor's backing in chaotic scenes.
This is a historic moment.
The chaos continued with the ousting of one of Marshall's key allies, Deputy Vicky Chapman, whose decision to deny a building approval on Kangaroo Island without declaring her interest in nearby property cost her the job.
On the eve of the election, it made it look like there'd been a resurgence of the infighting that had kept them in opposition for so long.
The opposition leader has been able to work with the crossbenchers to publicly humiliate the Premier in Parliament, demonstrating a different kind of leadership.
He's been in politics longer than Stephen Marshall. Peter Malinauskas is the consummate ALP factional warrior, and whether people like that or not, it can actually make you effective in your chosen career, namely politics.
While no incumbent government has lost a state election since the pandemic began, Labor hope the Omicron experience and its impact over Christmas will be front of mind for voters come March 19. Stephen Marshall, meanwhile, hoping his state's relatively low COVID caseload prior to reopening the borders, combined with the state's economic performance, will see him lead the Liberals to their first re-election since 1997.
I think Stephen Marshall will win, but I think it will be really close.
Joel Philp, Sky News, Adelaide.